Well, hi everyone. I'm here with a friend of mine, Jane Frankland, who many of you will know already. Jane and I have been throwing around lots and lots of concepts of late around the InfoSec space, and we thought, wow, we've got some really interesting material to share here. So let's get straight in. But Jane, for those few people on the planet who don't know you, can you just give a brief background to who you are and how you came to be here?
Yeah, cheers for that, Dan. I'm really looking forward to chatting to you again today. So the best way to describe myself, I think, is um, I have a portfolio career. So I do a variety of things. I've been in the industry in cybersecurity for over 26 years. I first came into the industry by building my own penetration testing company, which I owned for 16 years, and then did a few executive positions, the last one being as a managing director at Accenture. But what I've been doing really since selling my penetration testing business is a variety of things, things like speaking. I'm an author, I've written a couple of books. I'm a trainer, I'm also a coach, and I'm an influencer. So major brands like MasterCard or Intel or Microsoft or Cisco or Palo Alto and so on might work with me to get, I don't want to say more eyes on their brand, but it's more engagement for sure. And maybe more, I don't know if it's not an authentic voice, but it's another way to connect with an audience that they want to get in front of. And I think for me, quite unusually, I don't sit in one camp. So although I work with vendors and cybersecurity companies, I don't sit purely in that camp. I also sit in the CISO camp as well. So a lot of CISOs are my friends. A lot of them will sometimes view me as their therapist. I'm on stage speaking with them. I'm in groups working with them. So I'm quite unusual in that respect because I don't sit in one camp or the other.
I love that though, because you learn so much, don't you? And I think, you and I pretty much at the moment have a weekly cup of tea and sort of share ideas and bits and
Yeah.
pieces, but listen to other people, listen to what they've learned. It's quite extraordinary how much, your own knowledge base just goes boom, doesn't it? And, it grows and you can then share in turn.
I think so, and I think what's really interesting. I mean, we've been having like these weekly conversations, which have been absolutely fantastic. But what I'm seeing, particularly with leaders out there, whether they are business owners like you, or whether they're CISOs, they're almost like yearning for these conversations that are firing their brains, that are getting them to think in a different way, and that's enjoyment for them because it's so rare. Most of the time we're being pitched to, aren't we? Somebody wants to sell us something, and I'm conscious of that because I've got my own business, and I need to do that. But I think what's really rare is that we don't come to a conversation without having an expectation. We don't come to a conversation just to kind of say hi, and be open to listening and to be open to learning. It's usually with an agenda. And I totally get that because time is short, and we need to be really focused because we can be pulled in all different directions. But I think that's what I'm finding to be quite refreshing when I'm having these conversations with people like yourself and others, and we're just kind of open to things, and that's what I think where a lot of magic happens, where we get these learning lessons or we get these aha moments. So yeah.
These It's interesting you say that time is short, but I've written on my pad here, time is short, and thing is that in cyber, solutions are complex, and so it does need time to go through these things. And these are is it that we don't have time in our industry, Jane, or is it because there is a whole, I don't know, momentum in the industry pulling everyone along, demanding of their time? And actually, sometimes the best stuff comes from an informal chat, cup of tea, cup of coffee,
Yeah.
listening and learning and sharing with each other, because I found that to be an extraordinary thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, look, I will always say to my kids, I've got three kids, time is just a statement of priority. And I truly do believe that. but equally time is an asset. You know, it's, you can't get it back. You know, you spend the time, you can't get it back. It's not like money. You spend money, you can always make money. You know, so it is, it's a limited resource. And what I'm seeing, what I see so much of now, is complexity. I mean, you're absolutely right. I'm not necessarily sure that every cyber solution that is sold is complex. I'm not sure about that. But what I do know is that the buying cycles are more complex. So since the pandemic, I mean, they have just skyrocketed up in terms of like the buying centers, like how many buyers are involved in the decision making, how long it takes. You know, so we're seeing, you know, the decisions taking longer and less accountability, you know, on a decision. It's a group decision, and when they're kind of, they can be career limiting. You know, so a bad decision can be like, okay, you got it wrong, you know, there's the door. You know, it's kind of understandable. So if we think about what it requires to actually not convert a sale, but to do business, there is so much more complexity now than ever there was. You know, when I started my business like over 26 years ago, you picked up the phone. You had a name, whether it was in a directory that you'd acquired or whatever. You picked up the phone, you could get through to people, and you still can today. You just need a few more tools, and maybe a bit more tenacity. But you picked up the phone, you got through to someone, you organized an in-person meeting, and usually after that, business would be done. It wouldn't be a case of, let's have another meeting, let's have another meeting, let's have another meeting. It would be like, great, you know, let's move forward on it. So there was so much less friction years ago. And it's funny because even though business is cheaper to do because tools have come down in price, so you can start a business very cheaply, it can, I think, be more expensive to do business because of the time and the complexity and all of those hoops that you have to jump through in order to do business.
But that's really interesting about you saying the multiple decision makers, because that's pre-purchase, isn't it? And something I'll come to in a minute is post-purchase. But before I do that, one thing that we did, we actually threw all the tools out. We don't want them. And it's really interesting because, like we were discussing, there is a joy, there is a fundamental element to building a business that is designed to help people. And to help people, you need to give them the time. You need to share. You need to sometimes say, well, what we're doing there is not going to work for you. And, you know, maybe need to walk away. And that's got integrity to it. And in fact, I remember once upon a time, we won one of our largest ever financial services clients. And we won it because we walked away and said, we can't do that. That's not in our wheelhouse. And they said, people don't say that anymore. That everyone's trying to grab. So one of the things that you and I were talking about, and it was really interesting when I shared it, was we learn from our clients. And I am really, really proud to openly admit that, because isn't there a whole pillar in our industry where either professional services or SaaS solution providers for cyber always profess on the, we can do everything, it's amazing, you know, it will make the coffee, blah, it will save cyber security. Yeah, we sit there going, we've delivered this project, we learned just as much as our client. Wow, isn't that cool? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because I think that is working in true partnership, and it's really brave and courageous to approach it like that and be transparent like that. It's really refreshing, and I think a lot of the time, you know, we have enormous pressure on us as suppliers, as vendors, as partners, to be the guide. You know, I wrote an article recently pushing back on CISOs being the hero, but it's the same kind of thing with us as suppliers and vendors and partners. You know, we can be positioned as the hero, which in my opinion is the wrong positioning. Because the hero needs a guide. So really, I think we have more focus and attention and pressure to be positioned as the guide we know how to do this, we've done it before a million times or however many times, so you're in good company, we can help you, we can show you the way, we've done this so much, as opposed to, well, actually, we have done this, we can act as a guide, but equally we also can act as your partner, where we will always be learning and always be reiterating our approach. All of that knowledge, all of that learning goes into the pot, into the team, and back out to further clients. So I think sharing that is very courageous and brave, and it's not something that I see ever done. Actually, I haven't come across that.
That's, I mean, what's nice about these conversations, we don't script any of them, they're just as they are, right? I sit there filling up my pad of notes and things wanting to discuss, but Jane, shouldn't that be the norm? Seriously, because the cyber problem is complicated and it needs brains on it, not a client sitting there picking through, working out where are they selling to me, where are those points there? Shouldn't you derive a solution together?
But this comes back to really the first point of our conversation, where it's about being open, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Open to learn, open to listen, open to communicate. So much of the time, in my experience, if I think of the positions, and the roles that I've performed, not just in my company, because I don't work in that way. I approach things as consultant, in a consultative manner. So I'm listening. I'm not there knowing what I'm already going to sell you. I want to sell you the best solution, which is going to be bespoke, in most cases to you. But when I've worked for other companies, there's always that agenda. There's always, that premise of, we're going in to sell this solution. So it's not a case of really understanding the problem, understanding the root problem, and actually working in a consultative manner, which is quite ironic, because most of the consultancies, I believe, don't work in that way. They go in with an agenda to sell a specific solution, as opposed to being open to listen, open to really finding out, what the issue is, even though they're consultancies.
See, that's, yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because I find that former part quite alien. I find that, we would never go in with a plan to sell X, because where I see the issue in cybersecurity now is there is so much, and I've written it on my pad because it's such an important word, tacit knowledge in our clients now. Our clients are smart. They've got
Yeah.
really good CISOs that are experienced. They've got security teams in the generic form. Doesn't matter, pen testers, red teamers, lots and lots and lots of experience. They've got SOC, they've got EDR, they've got everything you can think of. Yet they're suffering from some very, very major problems around breaches, challenges, and such. So there seems to me to be a whole new era now of thinking and working and listening and sharing and being totally open, being yourself, and to bringing that to the table. And I think surely that commands a different level of respect and collaboration, doesn't it? I mean, isn't that what we need in the industry now?
Yeah, I mean, I do think we need a shake up. And
Mm.
I am really concerned about the industry. Yeah, I am really concerned about the industry, and how it's going. If we think about the levels of burnout, they're horrific.
Yep.
They're worse. They're worse than they're than the levels that were there for frontline healthcare workers during the pandemic. That's how bad it is right now for us in cyber. And that's really concerning, considering, just the jobs that we're doing in terms of supporting business,
Mm.
and supporting countries.
Mm.
So the levels of gender diversity, they're really concerning. And, I've done an awful lot of work on that. They're not improving. They're not getting better. Um, the fact that we have a lot of leaders, a lot of CISOs burning out and leaving, or just kind of going, do you know what, I've had enough. I've had a heart attack, or I've become ill, or I just cannot stand the pressure any longer. The regulations that are coming, down the line, all that already exist now, And it's just not worth it. It's just not worth the pressure, and it's just not worth compensation. So I am really concerned about that. The other thing that does worry me is with this exit of senior leaders, the new leaders coming in. And the other day I heard a statistic, and I haven't checked this, so I don't know if it's accurate or not. So, it needs further kind of research. But someone said to me that 70% of current CISOs have been in the job for less than 2 years.
Mm.
Now, if that stat is right, that's really concerning. It's concerning
It is
because
a multifaceted role, isn't it? It's vast in its touch
this is
points and
it.
knowledge.
This is it. And when we need CISOs to step up, how
Mm.
many times do we hear that CISOs need to learn to speak the language of the board? I mean, that could just be like media drama. It could be a case that actually most of them are, but the media likes to sensationalize this and have something to write about. I
Mm.
don't know. All the CISOs that I speak to know how to speak to the board. So I'm wondering where those CISOs are. Maybe I just haven't met them yet. But we do need CISOs to step up, and we need them to become much more integral to the business. So to be able to speak to many more stakeholders in the language that those stakeholders are communicating in, so that they get the message through, so that they can get them on side. And we also, I think, need CISOs to push back as well, and to not accept, some of the things that they're accepting.
Now, so there's a few threads to pull out of that. One I'd like to use is the word resilience. And I don't mean that from a cyber resilience perspective, but of emotional resilience, business resilience. Another CISO friend of mine I was talking to very recently, she said to me that she is at a point of saturation. And I thought, I've heard that a few times. And then
Yeah.
we discussed the word fatigue. And I'm talking not her, but I'm talking about the organization's got cyber fatigue because it's just so vast a problem. And then I heard a word which I have never, ever, ever in my entire career heard a CISO ever say, of cyber's becoming a nuisance. And I went, oh gosh, it is time now to rethink. Too many scan results, too much SAS, too much data. It's now a nuisance. I can't see what's really important anymore. What do you think to that?
I mean, cyber is a nuisance. We know that it's the department that likes to say no. So it's been like tagged with that identity for years. But for a CISO to actually be saying that about his or her job is very telling. And I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised, considering the amount of tools that are available,
Mm.
in the tech stack, that they're using, considering the amount of alerts that are coming through. So it's just like, yeah, I can really understand how someone could say, that about their job. It's overwhelming, isn't it? It's just like, well, what do I do about this? What do I accept, what do I not accept? So yeah, I can understand how difficult it is for them.
Well, it's a deluge, isn't it? A deluge of data. And the trouble is, another CISO very recently, I was, in fact, two of them called it out totally separately. One was in California, one was in London. And they both called out this kind of, going back to your point about decision-making processes, everything goes up to the point of PO and then let's execute.
Yeah.
Both of them called out the reality, which is, what about post PO?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
You've looked
absolutely.
up at that, Jane. Tell me, what's in your
Yeah,
mind?
no, because well, I'm doing a masterclass today. Obviously, like you're coming to it, but I'm doing a masterclass today, and I talk about the buyer journey. So it's just like, and actually in that buyer journey from awareness, it's
Mm.
all you've got about eight steps all the way through to post. But most just focus on the first, the 6 steps, and just leave it at point of sale, like it's done. But actually, you could argue that the work is actually done after. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
calling it the long tail. So if you take just, for example, pen testing itself, it's really cliff edge consulting in a way. You get to this huge crescendo and a delivery and a very quiet period when you don't actually hear the wave rolling in, and then this report and maybe a debrief, and then that's it, nothing. And there's nothing in the long tail of that, let alone when you are on transformational projects, raising the game in cyber. And both of those CISOs said to me, they asked the question, how much of my resource is this going to take post PO to get it alive? Not some client success component, but what really is it going to take? And some report back, not nothing at all, and there's an alarm bell, because of course every solution works out of the box.
Yeah.
Then on the other side, some will say 6 to 8 weeks, and then they say, well, we can't afford
Yeah.
time. So the solution is actually you can't get to the PO because they can't afford the post implementation to make it really work.
Wow. That's really
That's
interesting.
scary.
I mean, that is really, really interesting. Yeah. Because, if I think back to my pen testing days, um, oh, we've got so much rain like pouring down like outside. It's just making such a noise. But if I think back to my pen testing days, it would usually be pretty quick, from us, like, I mean, it could be days, it could be a couple of weeks, but it would be a fast turnaround, in terms of like actually getting that done. But you're absolutely right. Oh my gosh, it's like it's a horizontal rain coming down. But
Fantastic.
you're absolutely right in terms of, just that process. And what's again really concerning is that they are saying we cannot move forward with that. We can't do it. We need it doing. Obviously, they won't be speaking to you. But they can't move forward, with it because of that after sale process. The amount of time. I mean, that's really really interesting.
Isn't it? And I think it applies to SaaS solutions as well. And I think
Yeah.
it's that time versus value component. So it's very interesting. So of late, we have seen so many of these scenarios whereby we start to, when you really, a cup of tea is a very, very powerful thing in my book, right? The power of a cup of tea, because we all slow down, we all think. And sitting there with someone saying, what about the effectiveness of what has already been done and the organization? And let's peel that back. And if we take,
Yeah.
for example, the SOC, it is really troubling me, Jane, now, really troubling me, so much so I'm going to launch a whole blog series on it about the effectiveness of a SOC, because
Yeah.
I don't see personally, and I'm very lucky, I see all sorts of not just tests, but transformational projects, assignments, not traditional pen testing, but cyber projects that look at the value of the SOC, and people spend a fortune on this stuff. And it,
Yeah.
at worst, not even detected. Probably the other end of worst, which is every piece of data is there, but the people running the SOC haven't correlated it and made a decision that there is a problem. It's terrifying. So the effectiveness of the investments that have already been put in place, it's not working. I'm sweeping statement here, but what are your thoughts around this? You must see the same and hear the
Yeah.
same.
I think it depends. I mean, there's a variety of solutions out there when it comes to SOC, whether it's internal or external providers.
Mm,
Uh, but yeah, I mean, there are problems with some of those providers not, providing the value, missing things or not taking action. So I couldn't agree with you categorically, because I know that there are some really good SOC providers, out there. I'm working with two of them, and I totally back the work. They're very, very different, in terms of their approach,
right.
um, and their offering. But I totally back, the service that they are offering. But I know that in the market there is a whole variety, out there. So some do, so don't. So what's really important is, well, how can you actually tell?
Yeah.
When you're coming to buy, what are the questions that you need to be asking? If you've already bought, well, how would you know? How would you know? Before it's too late. So, and I don't think that just applies to SOC. It applies to other services. It could apply to pen testing. How would you know before it's too late?
And there's the answer, isn't it? Which is all these things, as you say, there's a spectrum of, well, I suppose it's a multi-dimensional spectrum as well, internal, external, hybrid of the two, real high end in the market versus, the big bulk of stuff in the middle. Stuff I see in the middle don't detect the fundamentals. And I'm talking 101 fundamentals. And then the problem is you leverage that with, attacks that bypass, typical MFA solutions and things like that. It's creating all the artifacts, but those particular solutions are not finding it. And then it's too late. Because last week it was extraordinary. It is nothing worse when you see a finance director log on to their environment and one of your consultants gets the authentication on their phone. That's a worrying scenario, but more importantly, the SOC in this instance didn't detect it. And I'm just picking a SOC here, but there's such a variety of controls, and the poor CISO, back to that again, that kind of dilemma. Where do they even begin? Because they've done the right thing and in good faith got all these tools and components in place.
Yes, and it's also kind of, well, does that explain why we're seeing so many moving on? Whether it's moving out. Again, there is another percentage. I think 25% of CISOs, this comes from Gartner, 25% of CISOs will be moving jobs in the next 2 years. And then I think another 25% of them will be leaving the industry in another 2 years. So it's not great. But is that why? Is it a case of, well, maybe I messed up here, or maybe it's somebody else saying you messed up, so you need to go. I don't know. How do they recover from that? And also the other thing is, do they actually care about that? Or have they got to a stage whereby it's a case of, unless they're legally responsible and can face, prosecution, well, I've done my best, so what more can I do? That, I think, the whole attitude, their whole attitude, is really important. How much do you care about this? And how much should they care? Because at the end of the day, it's just a job. So
But is it, Jane? What brought us all into cybersecurity in the first instance? So we lost that. We loved it because it was cool and interesting and was demanding. And I saw a post the other day with someone pretty much saying, come to this class, cyber is fun. I thought, I haven't heard that for quite some time, actually. Where do you ever hear the word fun anymore?
No, you don't. You just hear pressure. You just hear burnout. You just hear overwhelm. You can hear passion. You hear passion an awful lot. But you don't hear fun. It's you don't hear fun. And well, not most of us, but certainly of a certain age in cyber, so many of us just got landed with the job. Didn't they? I mean, it's just like they fell into it. How many times have you heard, people of our age saying, well, yeah, well, I just fell into it. So it's kind of interesting to see, what's happening now, because people don't fall into cyber. They strategically get into cyber, unlike our generation of practitioners.
Well, I suppose it was still being created at the time, wasn't it? Interestingly.
Yeah.
It goes to something else you said earlier, or another cup of tea a few weeks ago, actually. And your word is your bond, the integrity around that. Where's that gone, Jane? I mean, it's still out there, isn't it? But don't see it
Yes.
very much.
No, you don't. So my experience is that most people do not follow through on their word. Their word is, like, for me, my word is my bond. And if it isn't, I always expect to be called out on it. But it's like, if I say I'm going to do something, then I do it. Whereas, what I see in the industry is people who operate in that manner are few and far between. You don't often see it. Words are cheap. So people aren't operating on that basis. Their word is their bond. If they say they're going to do something, they do it. They don't. Most cases, they don't. And like I said, words are cheap.
But now, is that a function of just too much data, too much to do, too busy, or is it a a values thing that's and an
I think
ethic that's moved?
I think it's a values thing. Absolutely. I know mine is. I was brought up, to operate in that manner. So
Mm.
I'm very fierce about that. It says a lot about who I am and my identity. I brought my children up to operate in that way. If you say you're going to do something, then do it, unless there's a damn good reason, like an emergency or something like that. Um, or another like reason. But most people don't. Most people don't. So I do think that it's a values thing, and I am a big supporter of recruiting and hiring. Not just based on skills at all, but based on attitude, based on values. Values are so important. I think they come before skills. I would always pick someone, well, not always pick someone. If you need a job doing, sometimes you have to pick someone who has got the skill and just get the job done. But if I'm bringing someone onto my team, I'm always looking for the value alignment, first and foremost. Do will they fit in with my business and how I'm operating based on their values? Number one, not on anything else. Values. It's always what I'm looking out for.
These, when you do find people like that, the magic that comes from it, especially now there's something else I really wanted to dig into, which is it applies to the provision of services. It also applies to the way CISOs have the restrictions or the context in which they operate, which is the kind of culture which can create restriction, right? I know you're
Yeah.
big on and how culture affects. So let's go into that for a bit, Jane. Where do you see what do we need to do to build, as a CISO, an organization that's really open as a culture and embraces failure, error, and so on and so forth, and in the supply side as well?
Okay, well, I like to see leaders working from a basis of something I called high challenge, high support. And you have, if I were to draw you a circle with four segments in it,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you would have high challenge, high support in one segment,
Yep.
and I'll go in a minute. You would have high challenge, low support in another. You would have low challenge, low support, and what is that? Low challenge, high support. Yeah, in the other one. Now, if we look at low challenge, low support, that's the type of environment where people just show up. They're not getting, and this is all a mindset. So people just show up to this environment and they're not getting any feedback. So they don't know if their work is good or if it's bad. It actually doesn't matter. So what you get is really poor performance. You get sometimes you get people staying for a long time because they can do. They just take the money and go. But sometimes you see them leaving a lot. So there's a lot of churn. But what you don't get really is great performance, and you don't get a great environment to work in. So work doesn't spread about that. You get a
Mm.
lot of jobs. If you go up to low challenge, high support, you have great support there, but you have too much. So you have leaders that will support their employees emotionally. They'll be paid really well, but they won't challenge them. They won't stretch them. And what you find in those organizations is you get a culture of your team that is very resistant to change. So performance is pretty average. It's a really nice place to work. People will stay because it's good, but they're not challenged. They don't feel good necessarily about it, because you need that progression, you need that challenge, you need that spark and that energy. Then if you go into high challenge, low support, which is where I see an awful lot of consultancies, a lot of the major brands and bigger consultancies. You'll you'll go in and it will be a case of, make this job your own. It's sink or swim. We're really pushing you, we're really challenging you here. We expect an awful lot from you, but they don't necessarily get that guidance. Yeah, so they are left in this sink or swim environment. And if they
Mm.
learn how to swim, then often they are learning by themselves. They don't have a consistent standard approach as to how to do things. It's high pressure. There's high burnout. and there's a lot of churn. Now, some people love those environments and some people do really, really well in those environments, but a lot of people don't. So there's an awful lot of churn. And the performance is kind of, it's a bit random. You know, it could be good, but it's also random. In the high challenge, high support, that's where you get the two, both challenge and support, in equal doses. That's where you get raving employees, you know, employees who will absolutely love working at your organization. They feel safe, they have that psychological safety. So, but the support and the challenge has to be in equal doses, you know. So that's where you will have a flood of people applying to your organization, where word will get round that you're the organization to work, you know, with or at, you know, where recruitment costs will be low, because you've just got this lovely flood of people like knocking on your door, and there's a wait list. And where you get the best work, where you get that innovation, where people feel safe to fail and to be picked up from that. You know, there's guidance and there's a consistent approach as to how we do things here, so that everybody learns that. So when you're growing leaders and everyone is leading themselves, that's just paid forward. So it's really consistent, and that's why you get really good performance. So that's it described in a very not basic manner, but it is basic. There's more to it than that. There are more steps to follow, but that's the type of culture that you're aiming for.
I totally relate to that, and it's something that we strive to not just achieve, but strive to keep, because it's hard
Yeah.
to keep that as well. And I think it applies equally to the CISOs and their team as well. And
Mhm.
just a very simple story. The other night, as you know, I work some long time zones, everywhere from New Zealand all the way through to PST in California every day, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of challenge and a lot of context change as well.
Yeah.
One of the things I did, I got back pretty late, and off went my phone. And I thought, okay, I'll briefly answer that, see what's going on. Don't see many fires in life, which is kind of nice. So you think, phone's gone off. You answer it for a different reason. What's interesting? So I did, and there were three of my team on that call, and they were smiling. I was like, guys, what's going on? And they were all smiling, and you know, it's magic when you see a scenario where they have achieved something so cool that had such a big outcome for their client, and they were
Yeah.
proud of it, and their client was proud of it. And then suddenly you not just got a challenge, high support internally, you've actually got that with your client as well. Wow. Now this is where it's going.
This is it, and that's the shared victory, isn't it?
Shared
It's the
victory. Yep.
isn't someone spoke to me. I love that, because everyone, it's like the win-win-win situation, isn't it? You know, we hear about win-win scenarios, but it's like win-win-win, you know, so all parties are winning, which is exactly what we're aiming for. But I was talking to someone the other day, and what he was saying was, he was talking about victory laps, and he was actually calling me out on something, and he actually said, I bet you don't do a victory lap. You know, you need to do more of those. And
Tell
I
me.
said, do you know what? You know, I think that's true. You know, we'll celebrate a success, but then we're on to the next, aren't we?
Hmm.
You know, it's don't do that victory lap. It's just like take a bit of time just to go, yeah, amazing. You know, we did something really special. You know,
Absolutely.
do that. And it's just like, yeah, for so many of us, particularly when we're like high achievers, performers, and we're really hard on ourselves, we're just on to the next. We'll go, yep, great, excellent. I'm so happy. Well done, team. You know, might ring a bell. We might go out for a meal. We might have a drink. Maybe there's something else, you know, but it's like it's like next. We don't savor that for very long at all. It's next. So I kind of like this idea of a victory lap. You know, let's savor it just for a little bit longer, you know, and remember what it's like.
Interesting. Savoring that moment and the magic, shifting the needle and being proud of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is what I've always, as you know, had this mentality of come from pen testing, but pen testing isn't how we think. It's cyber and transformation and solutions and making it work. And if you can then embrace that kind of culture shared victory with the people that you work with, barriers are gone and the game raises and extraordinary things happen. A great client of ours said, and I love it, and he said it once and it's stuck, which is, let's make great things happen. Who says that? I think that's fabulous when a client says that. This is a client of a very, very major corporation, and we sit there as part of the team and make things happen together. And that's a shared victory. It's magic, isn't it?
It really is. And as you're as you're talking, what I'm thinking is, I spoke about like recruiting based on values. But
Mm.
when we're doing business, how many of us really look for the companies with the values, and not just the companies, but the people within those companies who we're going to be working with, who we're going to be sharing these victories, and wins with. How many of us actually um, do business based on that? So few, so few, and
Especially in
that's why.
cyber.
Sorry.
Especially in cyber.
Especially in cyber, and especially with companies that have pressure to do sales, at whatever cost. It's just like win the business, whatever cost. And they don't actually really care about the people who they're working with. It's purely about the transaction, but for me, we're in a people business. Although it's cyber, although it's technology, this is a people business. So it is about caring who you're doing business with. uh, is this person the right fit to do business with? Are these people, is this team, is the culture of this organization or this department, even because sometimes you can have different cultures, um, different departments with different cultures,
Mhm.
um, rather than the whole company. I've seen that many times, and that's based on the leader. So ideally, you'd have a whole company with this wonderful high challenge, high support mindset, that culture. But often that isn't the case. Often it is on account of the leader, and that's why you get teams like following leaders, and wherever they go, and those leaders doing great work because they've got that mindset, because they've got that culture. But I really do believe that's what you're looking for. You're looking for that good fit. Am I working with someone who wants to share this with us, or even just knowledge of that awareness? Is this person someone who is just purely out for themselves? They're going to take it, and they have no desire to really communicate with us, to really see us as being part of their team. And that's okay, so long as and don't get upset about it or want for something else. That's where you don't have that alignment, not a good fit. But kind of know who you're getting into bed with, in a way. that's
Mm.
I think
Are
that's
we,
really important.
well, Jane, on that, my final question then is, do you think then, are we in a new era that's breaking, if you like, because of the fact that everyone's got every cyber solution known out there? Do you think we're in a new era of values and thinking, care and mindset and partnership?
I do, because we've got new generations coming through.
Mm.
So we've got, the millennials are in a lot of leadership positions now, but we've got centennials coming through as well, and they're quite different to Gen X or baby boomers, in terms of their approach. So yes, I do think we will see different things, but we need to really, I think, craft what we want for our industry. How do we want it to actually be quite purposeful about that, as opposed to being compliant with it and resigned to it. So I do think we need to create the culture that we want to see in the industry.
Purposeful versus compliant. What an interesting way to leave it. What a really interesting, cool, and wide set of topics we've covered today, Jane. I really look forward to our next cup of tea and throwing all these things around and learning from each other and so on and so forth. But for the moment, we'll leave it there. Jane Frankland, thank you very, very much indeed.
Thanks so much, Dan.
Thank you.